Hey everybody, this is Dream. I broke my mic, so I'm trying to use my computer to record this. Hopefully it sounds okay. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button, please? Thank you. That really helps the channel a lot. I really do appreciate it. With that said, we have a pretty interesting race here. We have a lot of drivers that have a lot of opportunity in this race. I think about the top, pretty much everybody over $8,000 has some potential in this one. But with that said, we have some good plays underneath that range as well. But I do have my three favorite plays here in Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick, and Kyle Busch. I'll get more into that here. I do have a couple other drivers that I think have some potential to win this race, but I do have a lot of GPP plays, and then I have some extreme plays at near the bottom of the price range that we could utilize to help round out our lineups. With that said, let's get into it here. So we're going to start off with Kyle Larson. Now, Larson has started the season pretty well. He's also had some good finishes here. In the past, and as well in the last couple of races, he's actually started on the pole, and he's ended up with top five finishes. I think he'll do the same today. I do think the way this race is going to play out is that probably 7 of the top 10 guys will probably stay in the top 10 for most of the race. A few of them will drop back. One or two of them will probably drop back to the back, and then a couple of guys from the back will probably move up into the top 10, or at least the mid-range area, and maybe one from the very back. But with that said, that's kind of what I see this race doing. That's kind of similar to what's happened in the other two races here, with the Xfinity and the Truck race. So I do think that that's how this race will probably go. Texas is sort of a, interesting race most times. So I think the drivers that tend to do well in the bigger tracks will do well here as well. Kyle Larson definitely fits into that. Tyler Reddick is also one of my core plays here. He's starting fourth, and he can definitely maneuver up to the front. I am a little concerned about his speed, but I do think he's got the potential here, and he's had some upside in these type of races before. I don't love his upside, but I do think he's a good core play for this one, as he's a contrarian option off of Larson, so he's definitely worth a look from that perspective. If he can get if he can get to the front, he will definitely be able to hold it and get a lot of points from leading laps. Though getting it from Larson will be somewhat difficult. Kyle Busch is starting near the back, and that is going to give him a lot of upside in this race. I know Richard Childress Racing has struggled some, but even so, he's starting 35th. So even if he can get into the top 20, even he'll have some upside at this thing. But I do think he ends up in the top 15 and maybe even top 10 when it's all said and done. And so I think he's a great option on the slate. Another guy that I like a lot is Ty Gibbs. Now he's starting second. He also has the ability to get to the front and stay up there. So him, Larson, and Reddick, I think, are going to be the most competitive when it comes to trying to get the win today. And so those are going to be my top three overall. I have a laundry list of GPP plays. Uh, Byron, for instance, he can definitely move up and down. He's probably the high risk, high reward play of the upper expensive plays, though he has 2 wins in the last 3 races, so he does have some potential from that perspective. And he is starting sixth. I just don't think he's going to lead a ton of laps early, but I do think he can potentially get there near the end. Denny Hamlin is starting in a good spot, and he has some good maneuvering. I do think he finishes in the top 10. I think he'll also be somebody that gets in the win area. Barring a wreck, I think he'll finish in the top, 5 to 6 range at the very least, and then he'll be one of the 4 or 5 drivers that can compete at the top. Then we'll look at Ryan Blaney. I don't think he's going to compete for a win here, but I do think he's going to get in the top 10 to 15. So he does have some utility here, though his as a GPP play, but he definitely will probably struggle a little bit more than I think at this track. So I think he's probably a contrarian option at best at the GPP from that perspective. Um, Truex Jr. does look like he has some good stuff for this race. I do think he's probably the weakest of these top 10 drivers, but I do think he has that potential to stay in the top 10. Um, if he can withhold getting into any wrecks, he should get in the top 10. I just don't think he's going to move up a ton. And I don't really think he'll move down too much either. Christopher Bell is probably in the weakest position considering he's starting third, and he's going to have some risk here due to the price, but he definitely has that upside, and he can. If he can stick up there, then he can definitely get a top 5 finish. But I do think he ends up finishing in the top 10 or top 15 on this track. Chase Elliott is also a nice GPP play since he's starting 24th. He's got some maneuvering to maneuver. What did I just do? Sorry, Christopher Bell is third. Uh, I was gonna say Christopher Bell. Okay, sorry, I was reading the Chase Elliott thing. He's starting third, which is okay. Wait, I already talked about him. I'm sorry, I'm flipping here. I was trying to hit Chase Elliott. So Chase Elliott is starting 24th, and that gives him some ability to maneuver up. He's been pretty good at moving up in the past, and I do like his potential here. He's been finishing really strong the last few races as well, and I think he's going to have a type of car that can get in the top 10. He's one of the guys in the mid range that I think definitely have that upside. Ross Chastain is kind of interesting today. He's starting 12th. He's got some potential here. Um, if he can finish in the top 10, I think that will be okay, but I do think it's going to be hard for him to get too much higher than like 8th or 9th. I already talked about Kyle Busch here. He fits in there at that 9,000 price range, so that's very nice. Logano is interesting today. I don't think he can get the win, but I do think he can maneuver up because he's starting 20th, and so that does give him some utility here. If you look back at some of the other races, he started even farther back in the Echo Park Grand Prix here, where he started 35th and finished 11th. I think a similar type of thing, where starting 20th and finishing 11th, is definitely possible. Bubba Wallace. I don't love that he's starting 10th, but I do think he can finish well here. He does have tendency to do good at these types of tracks, and so this should have some upside where he can get a top 10. But anywhere from 5 to 15th, I think, is where he ends up. So he's definitely a decent play, but not a must play by any stretch of imagination. I talked about Ty Gibbs already. Then we'll look at Bowman, Keselowski, and Chris Buescher. All three of these guys kind of fit in the same range for me. They do start 14th, 22, and 19th, respectively. I do think that Buescher is probably the best of the three, but I do think all three of them have some upside and could finish around each other in the top 15. And so that definitely gives them some potential as well. Looking at Briscoe is avoidable. And then I got some extreme GPP plays would be Gregson, Eric Jones, Jimmy Johnson, and Joe Nemechek. Or sorry, John Hunter Nemechek. I think all four of those drivers have some extreme GPP opportunities, Hail Mary type plays, but they definitely have potential. Though their cars are a little bit inconsistent. I also like Michael McDowell to stick around in the top 15 for most of the race. Hopefully, he can finish in that range. Though he does carry some risk, he does have a GPP level potential here. I wish he was starting a little farther back to give him more upside, but I still think he's one of the better options that are sub $7,000. And then for some more extreme GPPs, we could look at Austin Hill and his starting near the back. It's going to give him some upside. Carson Hocevar, also interesting. Priest, Zane Smith, and Justin Haley all have, or sorry, Priest and Zane Smith both have extreme GPP plays, and then Justin Haley would be my Hail Mary option. Just punt it if you want and try to get him to maneuver up some. He has had some decent finishes inside the top 20 this year, and I think he can do that here, but he's definitely a Hail Mary play. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and have a nice day, guys.